All right, everyone, let's jump right in. We're about to open up a toolkit that's usually saved for spies and federal agents. But we're going to see how you, as a language student, can use these exact same psychological tools to get over that anxiety that really holds you back.
So picture this. You have this highly trained agent, super smart, in a really tense situation. They have to communicate, but under all that pressure, everything they've ever learned just evaporates. The vocabulary's gone, their mind is completely blank. For an agent, that's a mission failure. But for a student, I bet that feeling is pretty familiar, right?
And that leads us to the big question, doesn't it? How in the world do they do it? They don't have perfect, fluent language skills, but they have to perform. Well, the secret isn't some magic language trick. It's actually a powerful psychological system built for high-stakes communication. And we're going to break it all down.
Okay, so the very first thing any operator learns is that when you're communicating under pressure, you're fighting a battle on two fronts at the same time. It's not just about the words you're saying. It's about what's going on inside your own head, and it's about what the other person is thinking and feeling.
And this right here, this is probably the most important rule they learn. You have to win the internal war first. That fight against your own pounding heart and your racing thoughts. You have to get that under control before you can even think about managing the actual conversation. You control yourself, and only then can you start to control the situation.
So let's dig into that internal war. That feeling where your mind just goes totally blank. It's like you've hit an invisible wall. And listen, this isn't some personal failure. It's a real, well-documented psychological thing that we need to understand before we can start to tear it down. And here's its official name: Foreign Language Anxiety, or FLA for short. This is so important. It is a specific kind of anxiety. It can take someone who is confident in every other part of their life and just completely paralyze them. So if you've ever felt this, I want you to know it is real, it has a name, and you are definitely not alone.
So how does this invisible wall actually work? Well, a linguist named Dr. Stephen Krashen called it the affective filter. Think of it like this. When you're feeling calm and confident, your filter is low. Language and information just flow right in, no problem. But the moment you get anxious or self-conscious, that filter shoots way up. It creates a mental block that literally stops your brain from processing the language you're trying to speak.
And this anxiety isn't just one big blob of a feeling. It's more like a three-headed dragon. First, you've got communication apprehension. That's just the raw fear of even opening your mouth. Then there's test anxiety, the fear of being judged or graded. And maybe the biggest one of all, the fear of negative evaluation. That deep, nagging dread that you're going to sound silly or incompetent. This is the dragon we're here to slay.
So, how do you train someone to face a dragon like that? Well, it all starts with a huge shift in your mindset. They completely change the definition of what it means to be successful when you're speaking another language.
This is it. This is the core idea. The goal is not perfect grammar. The goal is simply to communicate what is mission critical. An agent who makes a connection with broken sentences, that's a success. An agent who is perfectly fluent but is too scared to speak, that's a failure. Your mission as a student isn't to get an A+ on a grammar test, it's just to make a human connection.
And check this out. This is from a declassified CIA report back in 1974. They ran their agents through these super intense, realistic training scenarios. And what was the biggest takeaway? It wasn't better grammar. It was a huge boost in speaking confidence. This proves that confidence isn't something you need before you speak. It's the result you get from practicing, even when you're terrified.
Okay, so we've figured out the problem. We've shifted our entire mindset. Now it's time to open up that first toolbox. These are the actual, practical techniques that operators use to win that internal war against anxiety.
And here it is. It's called the operator's triad. It's a simple but really powerful three-step loop you can do in just a few seconds. First, you breathe. And this isn't just take a deep breath. It's about using specific techniques like box breathing to physically stop your body's panic response. Second, you reframe. You consciously change the story you're telling yourself about the situation. And third, you rehearse. You mentally walk through the conversation, practicing the first two steps until they're second nature. Let's really look at that second one, reframing, because it's a big one.
This reframing step is an absolute game changer. See, your brain's default setting is what's called a threat appraisal. Oh no, they're going to judge me. My ego's at risk. But an operator trains themselves to flip that into a challenge appraisal.
Okay, this is just a chance to practice. My mission is just to connect. Simply by changing that internal monologue, you take back control and you turn that fear into fuel.
All right, so you've won the inner battle. You're breathing, you've reframed the whole situation. But you still don't have a huge vocabulary. So now let's open up that second toolkit. This is where you learn how to control the conversation even when you don't have all the words.
This framework is straight out of the FBI's hostage negotiation manual. Now, look closely at the order of these steps. Active listening, empathy, and rapport, they all come first. Influence, that's the part where you actually do most of the talking, is way down at step 4. And here's the amazing secret. You can build that entire foundation of trust, listening, empathy, rapport, while saying almost nothing. Your limited vocabulary actually becomes an advantage because it forces you to listen.
So how do you do that? The first tool is called mirroring, and it's so simple. You just repeat the last 1 to 3 words that someone said, but with a question in your voice. It's like a little verbal nudge that says, "Hey, I'm listening, tell me more." And it works like magic to keep the other person talking, which is exactly what you want. Next up, you've got labeling. This is how you build empathy. You just make a simple observation about their emotion. You don't say, "I understand." You say something like, "It seems like you're feeling frustrated." When you get it right, they'll say something like, "That's right." And that is the sound of rapport being built, right there. You're connecting. And while you're listening, your body is doing a ton of the work for you. These are the big 3 nonverbal signals that basically tell the other person's subconscious, "Hey, I'm a friend." It's a quick eyebrow flash, a little tilt of the head, and a genuine smile. These signals build trust before you've even managed to put a full sentence together. And finally, your tone of voice. This can be your ultimate secret weapon. You can mess up your grammar, you can pick the wrong words, but if you adopt what negotiators call the late-night FM DJ voice, calm, slow, reassuring, you communicate total control and safety. Your tone doesn't just support your words, it can completely override them. Okay, we have unpacked both toolkits, the internal one for managing yourself and the external one for managing the other person. Now, let's put it all together and see what this system looks like in action. So this is the whole system. You see on the left, you've got the internal toolkit that gets your own mind calm and focused on the mission. On the right, you've got the external toolkit, which makes the other person feel calm and receptive. It's a 2-part dance. First, you manage you. Then, you manage the interaction, and they work together perfectly. So, let's go back to that agent in that concrete room. They feel that spike of anxiety, but this time, they breathe. They reframe the threat into a challenge. They lean in, they listen, they use a mirror, they use a label, they control their tone. And just like that, the anxiety starts to fade. Not because they suddenly became fluent, but because they stopped worrying about the language and started executing their system.
And that's what I want to leave you with today. A final thought. What if making mistakes isn't a sign of weakness? What if being forced to sound imperfect and being forced to listen more than you speak, what if that isn't your biggest problem but actually your greatest strategic advantage?